Welcome to Bass University Live. Good to have you guys with us. It's going to be a great show. We've got Drew Gill coming on our show today. We're going to be talking about the Nico Rig and what's going on over at the MLF. He's having an AOY showdown with Jacob Wheeler, and it's going to be quite a battle as it runs out this year. He's the thinking man's fisherman, and we love having him on the show. We love having him part of Bass University, so look forward to having him on. Rich, how you doing, man? We've been busy fishing. It's May. It's wide open, man. How you doing?
Wide open. That's definitely one way to describe it. Wide open throttle as far as how fast things are progressing and changing and just evolving. I turned the air conditioners on for the first time this past weekend, Pete, in the house, and that's kind of a teller that when that starts happening, there's a lot of things rolling. And it was just a month ago that it was heaters still on out here in the shop for these live shows. So things are progressing fast. It's changing. So it's fun. It's fun time to be on the water. Even if you don't catch the tournament winning fish, you're still catching a lot of big quality fish. So it's a fun time of year.
Yeah, it sure is. We all were active on the tournaments this weekend, and Jake and I had fun down on the Chesapeake, catching a lot of fish out of the grass and flipping. And we didn't get competitive. We didn't get in the check line this weekend, but we had a lot of fun trying.
Yep.
It's fun watching him develop as an angler and getting hungry for the win, and trying to figure out how the tournaments get won and what we could have done differently to get there. And that's what Bass University is all about. This is everybody's active in fishing right now, so this is a great time to learn new techniques and strategies, and that are going to help you catch more fish. And that's available at your fingertips at Bass University. So go get yourself signed up right now. We've got a great 6-month offer happening at Bass University. So go get signed up and check out the amazing catalog and the tutorials. One of which is Drew Gill is available for us or all of us there, and we're going to be diving into some things with them this weekend. But it's so weird, we travel all over with Bass University. We're down in Texas and South Carolina, and when I was down in Texas, I got to fish in Texas and Louisiana. And I got to fish in Florida a couple weeks ago, and we're just so far behind, like the latitude that we live on. Like our waters are still, they're still spawning. They're still at the beginning of the spawn in a lot of places around here, and they're done at a lot of the other places that we visited early this year. So it's fascinating to watch how that spawn creeps up the north, So it's happening right now, and it's like you said, it's wide open, and we're going to be diving into some things with Drew and talking about some finesse fishing styles that he likes, and some of his electronics, Rich, which I know we're fascinated with. How do we get better at that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's what Drew is accomplishing at this point in his career is powerful. He's an amazing angler any way that you slice it. But the elephant in the room is forward-facing sonar, and he's really good with it. I'll just flat out say one of the best in the world. It's enjoyable to speak with somebody that is truly at the top of the craft and anything. And, I'm excited to hear about how he's not only using the FFS, but strategizing, strategizing his tournaments with it, incorporating things like a Nico Rig drop shot, jig head minnow, and then also the strategy behind, hey, MLF, BBT, you can't use it for all three periods. You got to pick and choose. And he's making a lot of the right choices right now. So it's going to be fun to hear about that process.
It really is. I want to give a shout out to Dave Riley. Got his first bass on a bait caster last week. Smallmouth on a chatterbait. What a fun way to get that done, man. We got Charles Pearson from Alabama Good morning. Danny Curlin from New York. It's spawn season up there. It's just getting started. Danny Steffen, our own Steffen Walden's here with us. What's up, buddy? And Dave Raleigh. So yeah, it's great to have you guys with us. And without any further ado, let's bring in our guy.
Come on with it.
There he is. He's a man. He's bad. He's just such a talented angler. He's currently in an AOI race right now over there at the Bass Pro Tours, and it's good to have you with us, Drew. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. How are you guys doing?
Man, we're great. We're just loving it. Our fishing season seems like it finally got to us, so we're super happy. We were talking before the show came on, and you said you were out doing a little fun fishing.
Mm-hmm.
What's fun fishing look like for Gill? Where's that go?
So when I'm back at home, we've got a couple lakes within about an hour 15 of me that I really enjoy spending time on. You know, they're a little bit different than you traditionally expect. So when people hear that I'm from Illinois, a lot of people, you know, we're talking a lot of our fishing crowds from the south, southeast. And so a lot of them hear that and they're like, he's from the north. He's from cold, smallmouth. We've got pretty much exclusively largemouth, very dirty water. And generally it's still going to be on that cooler trend. So it's a little bit different. It's a lot similar to kind of what people see through like Indiana, Ohio, kind of western, southern Pennsylvania. Like it's kind of that thing. You got off-color water lakes, small bodies of water, bank grass, and they can be pretty tough. But right now, I'll tell you what, this time of year is, you know, really end of March through the very end of May, about 2 months. Our fishing at home turns electric because absolutely everything gets on very specific places. And our contours in most of our lakes don't set up for them to use different contours different times a year in a convenient way. You know, a lot of the year, because of all of our banks being kind of like this, they're mostly straight up and down and then basin all the way across. If they're not using, you know, that 3 to 6 foot of water, there's no flat water for them to get on. And so there's nothing for them to get on off the bank unless it's really shallow stuff. And the only time they get on that really shallow stuff offshore is this time of year. And it is an absolute blast. I went and threw a crankbait this morning and caught, between me and my dad, we were actually shooting a Father's Day video for Bass Pro Shops, but not spoil too much of it. We picked up a crankbait, absolutely crushed them, caught a bunch of big ones. I think our biggest 5 ended up going 23 and change in 2 hours. And caught him on a plug almost every cast. It was an incredible time.
That is deep dive, like you know, going down 20 feet with a crankbait, shallow crank. What do you guys?
They were right on the end of a big flat, so they were in like 10 to 12. So they weren't super deep, but they weren't super shallow either. So you're talking that 10 to 12 range where you can your smaller big plugs where you can reel them pretty hard and not blow them out, but not the kind of ginormous stuff.
Right. Man, what a great deal to get out and spend that kind of time with your dad. Did your dad introduce you to fishing?
He did. I spent a lot of time in the boat with my dad as a kid. We didn't have a fiberglass boat growing up. It was something I always wanted to have, but it never made sense for us financially growing up. So we fished out of a 1978 Fisher aluminum my whole childhood, and that's how I fell in love with it. And we were actually at a lake today that I, you know, at one point I was about 40 yards from where I caught my first bass on a bait caster this morning. So it's a place that's kind of sentimental to me as well. And he was definitely the biggest part of me getting into fishing.
What is your dad a tournament fisherman, or was he just liked to fish?
He loved bass fishing. I fished for whatever bit behind him most of my childhood, and then transitioned to bass fishing when I turned 13. But he fished local tournaments when I was very young, and then it kind of just turned into just fun fishing because whenever he was able to have the free time, he was a chiropractor when I was a kid, so he was working every day. And then on the weekends, whenever we had free time, we'd go fun fishing because he didn't want to, you know, go fish a tournament and leave me at the house, which I really appreciated as a kid. He took me with him and we went fun fishing, and that meant a lot to me. And then as I grew up and as I started to get it, we started jumping in some more local stuff and fish local tournaments all through my teenage years.
Man, kudos to Pops, man. That was he really cultivated quite an angler out of his son. You know, that's great stuff. I'm fortunate that I'm fishing tournaments with my son now.
Yep.
And he's 15, and there's a lot of availability to do that. But we spent a lot of time fishing and hiking and spending time in the outdoors. It's I can't think of a better a better thing for a father to do with his sons.
And speaking from my experience, like some of my most fun tournament memories are fishing local team tournaments with my dad, and just like because at that age when you're, let's say you're middle school, high school, just getting into it, anything is possible. Like I didn't have any rational thought as to the next cast couldn't be an 8-pounder. Maybe it could. It never was going to be, nor did it ever happen. But maybe it could have happened. And at that age, you're just so excited for the next experience. And even if it's a poor one, you still feel like there was something possible that maybe it didn't happen this time, maybe it'll happen the next time. But you feel like anything's possible, and getting to experience those tournaments and those little, not massive victories. For us, a massive victory often was making a check, but those little victories and catching that clutch 4-pounder because we ran to somewhere we weren't planning on fishing, like that was the stuff, and that was the stuff that really got me hooked on it. My dad's a big reason why.
Yeah. High-fiving with your pops, man. The father and son celebration, man, they're epic.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. And shout out to Pops. Like you said, did a great job. But we're glad to have you with us today. One of the things that we wanted to talk to you about today is really one of the techniques that you're just killing them with, which is the Nico Rig. And that's how I call it. What do you call it? Is it the Nico or the Neko Rig? Let's get the word on it right now.
Just saying, I sort of jacked up my screen. All right, there we go. Should be better now. So for me, I pronounce it Nico. I don't know that that's technically the right way to say it. That's the way that I say it. That's but I think Neko is how it's technically supposed to be pronounced, but I say Nico.
No matter how you pronounce it, it spells out fish catcher. So
that's true enough, Rich.
Latin definition.
It's pretty incredible. It's one of the most versatile techniques that has ever been invented, because of the fact that with bass fishing, you're talking with all baits and techniques, you're talking a range of categories and purposes. You're not talking about the bait itself. You're talking about the purpose for it. So like some baits appeal to bass that want to feed up. Some baits appeal to bass that want to feed down. Some baits appeal to bass that want a bait that does a lot. And some baits appeal to bass that don't want a bait that does much at all. And, and then you have the side category, which is, does my bait look like something they eat, or does it not look like something they naturally eat? And that puts it in another category. And what we're talking about there with versatility, the word versatility, really what we're saying is how many different fish, different situations is this bait applicable? Does it serve the proper purpose? A Nico Rig checks the box for fish that feed up. It can check the box for fish that feed down. It can check the box for fish that want to feed on something that moves very fast and something that moves very slow. You can give it a lot of action or not at all. And it checks the box for, when you talk about does my bait look like something they eat versus something they don't eat? When you throw a bait that looks like something they eat, they're going to view it in that category, which means that if they think your bait is a shad, they're going to put it in that box. And if your bait doesn't act like a shad, they're not going to eat it. It's got to act like it. If they think it is, it better act like it. With a worm, you're not put in a box. And so those fish are just viewing that as something living, something moving that, they presume because they think it's alive, that it has calories in it. And so they're just looking for something to ingest so that they have energy later on. And with a worm, you're not putting it in a box and saying, this is what this is. And if I don't do it exactly right, a fish isn't going to eat it. A worm has that capability of catching one and being really user-friendly because of it, because of the fact that they don't put it in a box. They don't view your worm as something they've seen before, which means you can't do it wrong and screw it up for yourself. If you do something they don't like, they're going to pay attention to it, but they're just not going to eat it. And once you do something they like, they'll eat it. If I'm throwing a swim bait and I'm reeling it straight and I drop it 10 feet and that fish sees it just drop straight down and I start reeling it again, the odds of that fish ever biting after I do that first motion is very slim, because they're going to view it as a shad. And as soon as they determine that doesn't act like a shad, they're not going to eat it, no matter how right you do it after that moment. With a worm, I could flick it out there. I could shake it around, reel it super hard. And if they want it just chilling there, I open the bail, I drop it, and they're going to follow it down and eat it.
Because of their opportunistic nature, that works, right? They're going to that's an interesting strategy. You got a shad needs to look like a shad, but man, that Nico rig is just an easy meat for them, and they look at it like that. I like the way you're thinking about that. Let me ask you this: you're well known for forward facing sonar, and the big tool is the minnow, right? Is the jig headed minnow.
Mm-hmm.
How are you deciding? Like, all right, well, I want to look like a shad, or this is definitely a Nico rig situation.
With the minnow, I'm going to be honest. I put it in a box a little bit more aggressively than a lot of people do. Like you know, we talk about Jake Lawrence. Jake's a very good buddy of mine, and one that is incredibly good at a wide range of techniques. But I think he's the best in our field with a minnow. And he's one that keeps it honest in every situation. He's going to keep it honest no matter where we go. He's at least going to give it a fair shake. For me, I put it in a box. I'm going to put it in really cold water is a box for me. Meaning, if the water is cold, I don't care if they're on something, if they're suspended, if they're in current, if they're not in current. It's going to be a player for me when it's cold, regardless of the scenario. So this isn't I'm just throwing it when it's cold, but this is when it's cold. I'm not going to care what I'm throwing it around. I think I can catch one on it. But when it's not cold, I put it in the box of like suspended fish primarily. If they're not suspended or they're not fish related to some bottom composition situation or in a big group, but I'm not going to throw it when they're on a target. I'm not going to throw it at singles unless they're suspended. Really, when the water's warm, I'm pretty much exclusively kind of pinning it to groups, fish relating to the bottom, or some sort of bottom composition change, whether that be, rock, a clean spot of sand, whatever it may be, something that's not an object, something that's bottom composition related, or suspended fish. That is the box that I put it in. If it is a single fish, if it is a fish related to a piece of cover that's not in a big group, or it's just one that's kind of chilling, moving around up shallow, I'm not going to pick a minnow up hardly at all when the water's warm. It's just it. Oftentimes, and this is a place where I differ because I think a minnow definitely takes a lot of the credit when it comes to, primary scope related approaches, especially suspended fish, things like that. But I'm going to be honest, I catch the vast majority of my fish when I have scope on, the one period that we have it, I catch the vast majority of my fish all year long. Meaning if there's one bait that I catch them on, which probably I'd say 40% of all the fish I catch all year are on a worm of some sort, whether that be a Neko, a drop shot, a wacky worm, shaky head, whatever it may be, it's going to be on a worm. Probably a 15 or 20% hunk that's on a minnow, and then I've got that other 40%, 45% that is just a miscellaneous conglomeration of techniques. But I think a worm gets more play in my boat than I dare say just about anybody else that is a scope specialist, and it's for good reason. It's extremely versatile. It's powerful in a wide range of situations, and you can't do it wrong. I think that is one of the most important keys of the worm. Is you can't do it wrong. Just because you didn't get a bite didn't mean you did it wrong. You just didn't have the right approach for that cast. But a minnow allows you to do it wrong. If that fish gets up on it and you do something wrong with it, he's not going to bite it. You get no second chance. A worm, you always have a second chance. They're going to continue to give you interest, and that I think is kind of the magic of it.
Wow, that's powerful, Drew. That's well said and explained, and I love that thinking because I know a lot of guys are like me. I struggle with the minnow for exactly the reasons you're talking about. If it's not flawless on your approach and application, man, you're not getting that bite. So this is, you're filling me with enthusiasm to bring these techniques back into my scoping.
And I think one of the powerful things, and really in this category, this isn't just the worm, this is primarily worm techniques. But I think two that also fall in this category is like a Carolina rig and a jig. Both of those, they're going to give you second chances. They're going to give you the opportunity to approach them multiple times and still show interest. You're not going to screw it up by your retrieve. If you do something right, they're still going to bite it even after you do something wrong. And I think in this whole category, I mean, one thing that I always ask myself in a tournament scenario, because we're not talking about 5 fish in our format. We're talking about every fish counts, which is bite reproduction. How efficient can I be and how effective can I be with the time I'm given? Meaning, how can I make my minute last longer than someone else's minute? And how can I approach these fish in a manner that takes my human error out of it? Like, let's take my ability to screw this up out of it. And if you're taking somebody fun fishing, let's say you're going to fish for offshore fish, what is the first thing you're going to put in somebody's hand that's not familiar with fishing for offshore fish? Am I going to put a jig head minnow in their hand and tell them to get on the trolling motor and, oh, fire out there, shake it over his head, oh, go faster, go slower? Or am I just going to put a 1/4 ounce drop shot or a 1/8 ounce Nico in their hand and tell them, throw it out there, let it get to the bottom, and hop it and shake it around. And when it goes swimming off, you reel into it.
Right.
I'm 100% going to put a worm in their hand because it takes the human error aspect of it a little bit more out of it than it does with a minnow. With a minnow, I kind of describe a minnow like I am conducting a symphony. And if I wave my wand the wrong direction, it's going to sound horrible. And I'm going to ruin the entire orchestra because I waved my wand the wrong way. A worm is pulling up Apple Music on my phone and tapping a button. I can't do that wrong. I might pick the wrong song, but the song's going to play. Like, as soon as I get to the right song, it's the right song. I can't make a mistake. You know, with conducting an orchestra, you could definitely make a mistake. And that's the thing with a minnow is, like, you can make yourself look like a fool, be around the winning fish, be around them with the right technique, and just fish it wrong and not catch any of them. The fine line for a minnow of bite to no bite is incredibly thin, and getting them to cross that is the problem because you can't force them to eat it. They have to choose. And so you have to do it right. You have to do it perfect. And if you can get one to cross that line, you can get a bunch of them to cross that line. But if you can't, if you don't do it right, you will get zero to bite it. None.
Yeah.
Or if you do it right, you might get 30 of them to bite it. With a worm, if they're biting a worm, I promise you it is not going to be 0 to 30. It is going to be 7 to 12 or 18 to 20. It's going to be a much slimmer margin, and it takes your error out of it.
It's a much higher percentage tool, and based on the way you're describing it, and I like that. I built my whole strategy off using the highest percentage tools in various applications, and boy, that's exactly what you're describing to me now. It's fascinating. Now, when it comes to the Nico versus the drop shot or shaky head application, I know you've got to have a strategy for that. When do you pick which and why? So
when I show up to a lake fresh, let's start at like ground zero, point A. When I show up to a lake fresh, I'm going to start with the Nico. That is going to be my starting point because that Nico is going to indicate what direction I need to move because of its power to, you can throw a Nico out there over one, let's say you're throwing it over a clump of grass and you can shake it and wind it over a clump of grass and pull them up on it. And a lot of times they'll eat it up. Or let's say you're fishing a rock pile off the bank, or you're fishing a road bed. You can fire it out there, you can drop it to the bottom, and you can drag it across the bottom, and they'll eat it on the bottom. It's a great indicator of whether they're feeding up or feeding down. If you have scope, it's really easy to just look out there, watch it occur, see those changes. You can see that when you lift that bait up, they lose interest. When maybe you drop it and they lose interest, you're going to see those cues. If you're fishing blind, it's the same thing. I'm going to set, for me, I'm going to put myself in an area that I assume is productive, and I'm going to put myself on a timer. I'm going to look at my screen, my graph, and I'm going to see, okay, it's 10:18. Okay, it's 10:18. I'm going to give myself 5 minutes, and I'm going to throw it. Let's say I'm fishing a stretch of riprap. I'm going to fire it up there. I'm going to shake it, keep it up, shake it in place for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to keep working down. Again, I'm not going to change areas because if you change areas, that might change the result. But I'm going to stay in that same area that I presume has fish, and I'm going to fire it up there, and this time I'm going to hop it and drag for 5 minutes. And I'm going to keep doing that in intervals until eventually I get a bite. And that bite will, give me a cue in what direction I need to go. And that'll play itself out if you're fishing blind, which I do a lot. I do that same process in our BPT events when I don't have scope. If I have to go fish for a different population, I'm going to do that same, chronological approach in a tournament. But the magic of the Nico is you can get them to eat it up, you can get them to eat it down, and you can also, wind it and get fish that are in a group or, fish that are a little bit more roamy to show a ton of interest really fast. And you can also just leave it in place and just bump it like fishing for bedfish and things like that, like I did at Chickamauga last week. Like, it's just so powerful and versatile. A drop shot and a shaky head don't have that level of versatility. They're still worm techniques. They're still very powerful. But a drop shot loses its power when you have to hang it. because you just don't have a ton of control over it. And I'm going to be honest, a lot of times when you hang it and shake it, they pay just as much interest with the weight as they do the bait.
Wow.
And then with a shaky head, the thing with shaky head is once your shaky head falls over, it's done. You're dragging that sucker across the bottom the whole way back, and you're pulling from the nose of the worm rather than pulling from the midpoint, which means you're not able to make the same amount of movement and yet keep the bait in the same place. Like a shaky head, if I'm shaking it real hard and dragging it, that shaky head's going to be moving across the bottom. With a Nico, with the weight being at the bottom and my hook being centered in the middle of the bait, when I shake it, oftentimes I can put a ton of action in it without moving that bait over distance. So that's kind of where it beats, those other two, what I'd say are the other two really good, efficiency worm options. And the Nico kind of it's the Swiss Army knife. It can do all of it. There's sometimes where it's absolutely unbeatable, but it can do all of it really well. So it's going to be my lead in. And I'd say with that in mind, 100% of the time I'm starting with that Nico if I'm going to go approach a fish that I presume is going to eat a worm. 100% of the time, when I show up to lake, I'm starting there. As you work through, I would say 65% of the time after trying it, I will be in some variation of a Nico rig, whether that be a long worm with a ton of action like our Nico Rama, a smaller worm with very minimal action like a trick stick, stick style bait. 65% of the time, I'm going to lead myself to some variation of the Nico.
Okay.
And then by using the Nico, occasionally I'll lead myself to either a drop shot in a situation where you might have some different water, different bottom composition situations, or you're trying to be super efficient, whatever that may be. Sometimes it's going to be a drop shot. Sometimes you lead yourself to a wacky worm where you want to keep it above them and only above them. Sometimes you lead yourself to a shaky head where you need a ton of bottom contact and you don't want to lose that connection. But 65% of the time, I'm still going to be on that Nico after starting with it, but I'm always going to start there.
How much are you varying size of worm?
Did he freeze on you? Drew?
Yep.
Okay. I
Yep.
I never know if it's me freezing or somebody else freezing. So he was asking you about the size of worm.
Yep.
I want to follow up with that because I had the same kinds of questions. Like, do you happen to have any examples in front of you right now that you?
I tell you what, I do not at the moment. I'm in the corner of my room. Actually, I do. I've got a bag right here of should have a bag. I do not.
This is great. This is great, by the way, Drew. We get a really clear shot of all your trophies in the background.
Yeah, I did. So
that's quite a few.
I've got my worm box in the garage right now, so I don't have them right in front of me.
Yep.
But in this situation, I'll give some pretty striking examples that everybody's going to be fairly familiar with. Perfect. As always, Dad is watching and came in clutch, threw a bag of worms in here, right there. So that's our Nico Rama. That is a 7-inch. This is kind of the starting point for the Nico worm, in my opinion, is some sort of long worm that's going to have a ton of action. Something that, like, realistically, when I'm talking about a Nico worm and something that has a ton of action, one good way to test it, just take your bag, open it up. Don't think about it too hard. Just reach in, grab a worm, lift it up. Count how many seconds it takes for that worm to stop moving. Okay. So I picked it up, counted. You're really, for most of that action to be gone, it takes about 8 or 9 seconds.
That's
you pick up. So if I've got a bag of Senkos here and I reach in, I grab a Senko and I pick it up, it's going to take like 2-3 seconds and it's going to be done. Action is going to be totally done. So that same concept, although you're in water and not air, it's a different medium, it still holds true. I'm gonna not think about it too hard. I'm just gonna reach in, grab the worm, pull it out until that action stops, and I'm gonna grab it right wherever I would hook it. I want that to be a fairly honest indicator of how that bait's gonna move on that hook point. But I'm gonna start with that 7-inch, ton of action kind of size, and occasionally, that's where I'm gonna be primarily, in that 6 to 7.5 inch worm category. My go-to is our 7-inch Nico Rama, but there's a lot of good worms in that category. 6 to 7.5 inches. And I'm going to be with something with a ton of action. I'd say it's probably low 90s% of the time. I do not switch from that 1 out of 10 tournaments, but it doesn't take 20 tournaments for me to switch away from it. So I'd say somewhere in the 92, 93% of the time I'm throwing that worm. If I switch to anything different, it is almost always going to be a shorter stick bait presentation, something that is 4 or 5 inches, that is an absolute no action, heavy salt stick bait, like a Senko.
Right.
Something that I can sling out there. It's going to fall really fast. And it's going to have zero movement whatsoever. It's just going to stand there and play with their head. And that's what I throw when it's not that situation. But I'm not overcomplicating this. That's one thing I really believe in, is the power of action and profile, which means because of action and profile being so important, you can lump baits into categories. You don't have to buy 40 different iterations of the same bait or technique. You got to buy a good example from each category, meaning you're going to have no action stick bait style, and you're going to have ton of action, wacky, shaky worm style. And those are your 2 categories, which means I don't have to own 40 different iterations of the worm. I got to own a good heavy action one, and I've got to own a good stick category one. And I'm not going to overcomplicate this. I don't, one thing that I loved from watching Bass U growing up, it was something that I spent a lot of time doing, especially in our cold winters, was sitting around and just binge watching seminars. And I'd watch them all winter long. And one thing that I found to be pretty true about most of your A-level anglers, your guys that are really, really dialed, is that they're not going to overcomplicate the bait approach. They're going to have a core set of techniques that plays really strong for them. And they're going to have 1 or 2 baits in that category. I'm not going to have 24 lipless crankbaits. I'm going to have a silent one. I'm going to have a one knocker. I'm going to have a rattling one that I like. And I'm going to have, essentially 3 in that category. And that's just going to be it. I'm not going to overcomplicate it. I think that's really important with bass fishing. And that is really important still with the Nico Rig, is understanding the purpose behind what I'm doing. Sometimes there's a ton of action required. Sometimes you just want to throw them something that doesn't move a lot, but just kind of plays with their head. And those are the 2 situations. There aren't 3 situations. There's 2. So there's 2 kind of categories for that worm, and that's where I fall. From there, you kind of transition into weight selection, and that's where you start getting in the weeds a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I have that list.
Get into them.
Question. Let's dive into the weights. Are you weightless at times, or make the bait do a lot of different things? What do you up weights?
So with weight and understanding weight is not weight. So when you talk about weights that you put in a worm, we got like 3 categories. You got an external weight, which is going to be some sort of screw weight that you're gonna like a mushroom style head that you're going to screw into the end of the worm. Mm-hmm. You're going to have an internal weight, but the internal weight, it matters if it's lead or tungsten on how that bait's going to act. So you talk about an external screw weight, you got an internal tungsten weight, internal lead weight. And this is just traditional Nico setup, meaning we're going to put the weight in the end of the worm, the fat end of the worm. So this is traditional Nico setup. We're not going crazy and saying, oh, I'm going to start putting the weight at different angles, further up the worm, because sometimes that happens, but that is very few and far between. So when you talk about external weight versus internal weight, external weight, like a screw weight, it's going to make that bait fall very fast. It's going to make it vibrate really hard. And it's going to keep that bait really true to its path, meaning that bait is going to fall straight down. It is going to track straight across the bottom, and it's going to be kind of high contact, high vibration, speed Nico is kind of where the external weight comes in. So that's going to be a deep Nico. That's going to be Nico I'm going to throw for groups of fish, even if they're not deep. That's my fire it out there, reel it up a couple times, open the bail, let it drop, flip the bail, reel it up a couple times, open the bail, let it drop. That's one that I'm going to shake a ton, like get super angry with. And it's one that I'm not going to be super methodical about. I'm going to use that external weight in that scenario. And I'm going to trend a little bit heavier with that. So I'm going to be never less than a 16th on the external weight. I'm going to be 16th, 3/32, 8th, 3/16. Like that's kind of the block of weights that I'm going to use for that external weight. And then as you move into internal weights, so with internal weights, a lot of times I'm going to start with tungsten. Bass Pro makes a nail weight that I use. It's tungsten weight. It's great. And that tungsten, because it's so much denser, it's not bulging the worm out, which means what's happening is it's kind of like if you balloon out the nose of, it's a little bit different because with those baits, you're pulling them from the nose. But if you balloon out the nose of a swim bait or a fluke, that action gets way more inconsistent and wild. And a similar thing happens with a worm. It's not the same, but a similar thing happens if you put a lead weight in, it balloons the nose out and creates essentially more drifting action with the same amount of weight. With tungsten, that's kind of my starting point. I'm going to put an internal tungsten weight in. It's not going to fall as fast as an external weight. It's not going to fall as true as an external weight. It's going to have a little bit of drift to it. And as you shake it and fish it, it's not going to be as vibraty. It's not going to be as snappy as that external weight. So it's going to be kind of your more traditional, like finesse, right, throw it around, shake it around worm. This is going to be kind of my mid-range worm. My everyday do it all kind of starting point is an internal tungsten weight. And I'm going to start at 16th, occasionally down all the way, even to 1/32. With the internal tungsten weight, rarely am I ever going to go in excess of 3/32. Occasionally 1/8, but 1/8 is kind of the breaking point where I'm going into a purpose that I need that external weight because that's going to do me a little bit more good. It's going to keep me more efficient, keep my bait acting more snappy and aggressive. And then when we go to an internal lead weight is something I'm only going to use in a situation where I need the castability of a Nico and I need the efficiency of it. I need it to be more efficient than a wacky worm in terms of precision of presentation and casting distance. But I still want it to drift a lot. I still want to be able to keep it up. And that's where that lead weight comes in handy because I can use the same amount of weight. I can use very minimal weight, just like I would with tungsten, but it's going to balloon the nose of that worm out a little bit more. It's going to puff it up a little bit, slow that fall, make that worm act a little more drifty and flowy. Which the important thing with that is that when we talk about a bait drifting or like spinning on the way down, what we're talking about is a bass doesn't eat a bait that drifts on the fall because it drifts, although that may add something to it. What happens is we've all been taught that the closest, the shortest distance between 2 points is point A to point B, straight line. Mm-hmm. But, if it's, let's say we're in 4 feet of water and my worm falls straight down, it's going to take the amount of time that it takes for that worm to travel 4 feet. If it drifts, it starts spiraling or it starts kind of easing around. I've now taken that 4 feet of water that I have and I've turned it into 5.5 feet, which means essentially I've got the rate of fall of a straight down fall in 5.5 feet of water in 4 feet, which gives them more time to look at it, more time to come catch it if they want to eat it up. And it's making my bait do something that it would do in more water in less water because of that drifting action. So it's really important when you're fishing at shallow to maintain that freedom of movement with that worm and allow it to do its thing. I think that can be a very big deal. So I will never throw that external weight in shallow water because I don't want it to just snap down. I want to give it that drift, give it that time to get down there to where bass can come over, inspect it, look at it, and potentially bite it before it ever gets to the bottom.
What do you like in grass, Drew, in a grass environment?
So in a grass environment, I'm generally going to stay on the lighter end of the spectrum, unless we're talking deep grass and I'm trying to like snap it out of the grass and be super aggressive. But generally, we're talking shallower grass, like shallow eelgrass and stuff like that. I'm going to throw 32nd ounce weight, not much more than that. I might throw, a tick more than that, even up to 16th, but I'm not going to get very heavy at all. And I'm going to really important thing is maintaining tension of your line. Keeping your line tight is really important with that, because if you ever let it have total slack, it's going to bury in the grass. If you keep it tight, that worm will keep itself above it.
What internal, external? What do you like?
Internal, 100%.
Okay.
That external weight has a tendency to catch, so I'm going to lean on the internal weight for sure. And then with grass, I'm going to lean internal lead. because it's going to balloon that nose a little bit more, and it's going to have a little bit more resistance to falling down in the grass.
Do you use only one type of tungsten or one type of lead, or do you kind of mix and match across the board for like applications? Like
What do you mean about that?
Brand wise.
So with the external weight, brand wise, I'm throwing our big bite baits, screw weight. There's a screw mushroom head that's really good. With the tungsten weight, I'm throwing our Bass Pro premium tungsten nail weight. The lead, I really don't have a preference. Lead is lead in my opinion. Whatever you can get that's cheap and effective is my vote for lead for sure.
Do you get in the weeds so far to the point where do you consider that where would you think maybe some brands, some different manufacturers, they may not be exactly what they're listed as? Because like I'm kind of unorganized, and like when at the end of the year I'll have all my cutoff tungsten weights will kind of be in one area, but I can tell by looking at them a little bit, but like, so I actually have like a little scale where I actually wet, to make sure this
keep them honest.
Yeah, keep them honest. Exactly. Do you see variation in that, like in your Nico weights at all, or do you get that far into it, or?
There is a little bit of variation. So once you go to a certain type of weight you like, whatever brand that is, I would say if you're going from one weight to another, meaning across the scale of weight, I'd stay pretty brand true. Most of them are going to be accurate, but I have seen it for sure where it is not. Where it says it's a 32nd and it's a 16th, or it says it's an 8th and it's a 16th, or it's a 16th and it's actually an 8th. Like, it does happen.
Let me ask you this: like, as you're fishing and you're going through your process of seeing how fish are behaving, and I'm talking about it, scopes on that period, or you're just we're talking scope.
Yep.
What's your process like of actually upping or dropping on the weight? Like, so for example, like if you're seeing a fish behave on your scope and it's not doing what you want it to do, will you at times just keep that same worm on and put another smaller, internal weight in that same worm and glue it over, or will you set up a whole new rig, or like how does that all work?
It depends on what I want the worm to do. If I care about action and I care about that bait being really aggressive and like, with a Nico, if you rig it right, a lot of times it's going to vibrate. It should. If you have an elastic worm, which is one thing I was really big on our worm, making sure the elasticity of the worm is really high, that the worm really wants to shake and vibrate. So if I care about that vibration, which most of the time I do, I'm not just going to stuff another weight in it, because if I do, chances are it's just like spining a swim bait with a bigger hook. When you put a bigger hook in it, you're restricting that action. So I'm not going to tend to want to jam another weight in it. But if I'm needing a quick reference on, is this a positive direction to move or a negative? Yeah, I'll stuff another weight in there and throw it just back out there. And oftentimes I'm going to throw it the same fish again, because you're only going to see if that was a really positive change. If, let's say, you throw at it and you don't catch it, and you make that switch and you throw at it again, and it shows you a positive change even after throwing at it already, that's a huge, huge exclamation point that you did something really right. Because if that fish has already been thrown at and he acts better the second time, even if he doesn't eat it, if he acts better the second time you throw at him, that's a really good indication that you made the right decision. So I'm going to sit down. I'm going to make an adjustment. I'm never just going to beat my head against a wall throwing a worm at him over and over and over again until I really dial it. And once I've got it dialed, I'm not going to make a ton of adjustments. But in terms of, let's say it's the first fish I throw out of the day, if it doesn't eat, I'm immediately going to sit down and make an adjustment. Make an adjustment, and just keep working around. And I say first fish, really meaning if I throw it 2 or 3 and they don't eat and they don't show any positive feedback, like they really act like they're going to eat it, I'm going to make an adjustment.
Do you find yourself more often going lightning, going lighter or going heavier to see the positive reaction?
Heavier, more often than not. Heavier is going to give you a more positive reaction. Lighter often catches ones that are a little bit more spooky, and chances are you're not going to catch those on a follow-up cast. So I'm going to move lighter whenever I'm trying to throw it, and fish for them. Oftentimes, lighter is always my move for fishing for them in really shallow water when they're not comfortable with a big splash that comes from a heavier worm. or really aggressive action. They just want something that you're just playing with them with. You're not trying to get super aggressive and in their face. So
Gotcha.
that's almost always a shallow oriented thing. So if I'm going to make an adjustment and I'm not shallow, oftentimes, I start at that 16th. I'm going to work heavier is the first direction I'm going to go before I ever go lighter.
Gotcha. We have a question from Ryan.
Rick. I'm sorry. I wanted to ask this question on weights before you move on, and I'll throw it back to you, Rich.
Yep.
But do you ever move the weight in the body of the worm to get a different action? Do you put it always in the same spot? Are you doing it in the middle, on the tail? Do you ever adjust that way?
So I have. The difference there is that if you get that weight, you go from being in the end of the worm, let's say the middle of the worm. I wouldn't even consider that a Nico rig at that point, because you're creating a totally different action. The Nico rig is primarily a straight up and down. I view it as a vertical worm that has a ton of tail action, and it's kind of hitched up in the middle. And it's got tail action, very little nose action. If let's say you put the weight in the middle, you hook it in the middle. Now it's got tail action, and the head's also shaking and moving. At that point, I think we've just got a weighted wacky rig. And if you were to put it in the tail and hook it in the middle, now you're talking about kind of an upside down Nico. So that's something I haven't really played with, but I have done that. But at that point, I would start to consider it something different from a Nico rig, because you're fishing it in a different manner. So.
Yep. Understood, Rich. Let me throw it back to you. You had
there's a question on the board from Ryan Hill. What bands in O-ring do you like for your Nikos?
So I primarily, if I'm going to use one, I'm going to use. I'm going to be honest. This is the best solution for this that I've found. Is G-Crack makes a good one. Their little Nico hack is a great option. In the O-ring band, unless you glue it, most of the time it's going to slide off. So I'm going to go with that Nico hack. It's a great little deal. It's shaped like a T. It's shaped like this, and it's got two little prongs, one on each side of the T. And you poke that spear through the middle of the worm on the back side of it, and that T will bite into it. And you put your hook through there's a little loop on the end of that spear. And so as you fire it out there and you shake it around, whenever you put a ton of pressure on it, that T is going to pull the worm from the back side rather than the front side, which means you're even less likely to lose that worm. And I use the large size, and that is kind of my go-to. It's pretty much the deal for sure.
What's your hook?
My go-to is going to be, just for everyday Nico, size 1 cover shot or rebarb medium wire. And then from there, if I'm fishing for really big ones, like I know the odds of me throwing in front of a 5+ pounder is really high. I'm going to switch to a 1/0, either HD cover shot or medium wire rebarb, and I'm going to switch to something bigger, because I will say this. The major Achilles heel with a Nico, and the one thing that will make you never want to throw it again for the rest of your life, is the fact that if you don't set the hook hard enough on a big one, this doesn't really happen that much with even fish under 3.5, 4. But with really big ones, I don't know what it is about their mouth structure that's different, but it tends to bind the worm before the hook point catches. And so if you don't set the hook really, really hard on big ones, you're oftentimes going to get your worm fouled, and you're going to think you have her drilled because she's holding on to it. She comes up, first jump, throws it, and you bring your worm in, and it looks like a 5-year-old wrapped a night crawler around a little bluegill hook. Like, it's going to be double, tripled over your hook. So I'm really big on, with this Nico rig, like for demonstration purposes, I'm going to back up. With a Nico rig, whenever I get a bite and I know it's a big one, whether I'm looking out on the scope and I see it, or I just feel like a tonk and it's a ton of weight, I'm going to reel all that slack tight. I'm going to be pointing at it at this angle, like almost pointing straight at it. And I'm going to crack it on total tight line all the way to here. And I don't want to hear my drag pull, but just a little bit. I want to hear my drag pull from here to here. I should not hear my drag from here to here. Like, it should just happen on the very end when I really get into putting a ton of pressure, and I'm going to drill them and I'm going to put a crap ton of pressure as the very first thing I do. And then I can back off the drag and play them. Because once you get that hook set and drilled, then you can back off the drag. They'll swim all day, jump. You can eat your lunch and hold on to your rod, and they'll swim around out there and never come off. But if you don't initially hook them, that's what gets you with the Nico. Very rarely does a fish come unhooked. Very, very rarely. I'm talking maybe 1 in 50 fish, maybe. Right. That honestly might be high. But the ones you lose are always when you coil the worm up on the hook. I had one at Hartwell in the Invitational there this year that cost me winning that tournament because I babied it, and I just kind of eased into it on day one, and it was about a 6, 6 1/4 that came up and jumped off, and I reeled it up, and my worm had wrapped 4 times around my hook, and my hook point was buried in the tail. Never hooked the fish, and that'll cost you big time. I had that same thing happen. When was the last time? I had it happen once last year. I can't remember which tournament it was, but fouled it. Oh, it was Sam Rayburn. It was a 7.5 pounder. I caught it Sam Rayburn on the last day of the tournament that fouled it twice because I didn't set the hook hard enough. And the third time I finally get it and set the hook straight up and drill her. And every single time, if you set the hook hard enough on a Nico with a big one, like this is just referring to fish over 4, really honestly fish over 5. If you're setting the hook right, you should not come back with a worm. You should not ever come back with a worm. Because if you set the hook right, that worm should clear itself. Because and I don't think it's that the worm's just coming off. I think it's that you are still hooking, the worm's still wrapping around the hook, and you are just power cleaning right through it. Power. And so you should never come back with a worm if you're hooking a big one right.
Well, I've seen Rich set the hook. I don't think he'll have any problem setting the hook as hard as he needs to with this technique.
Which also means, that 1/0 medium wire hook, and I'm going to be on like 12 or 14 pound fluoro leader. Like I'm not throwing 7 or 8 pound fluoro.
Yep.
What rod are you throwing, Drew?
7.6 medium light fast K2 is Phoenix K2 is my go-to.
Gotcha. By the way, guys,
a little bit stiffer.
Sorry, Drew. Everybody on the board, Drew's seminar about the Nico Rig is coming out real soon. So all this juice, you can get even more of it next time. But go ahead, keep going on the rod, Drew.
Yep, I like a long rod for making long casts very easily, and I can get a lot of action out of it with very little movement because that rod kind of does it for me. But it's a really quick tip, so I can shake it, and that tip has a lot of limber action, but it really doesn't bend much past the 4th, 5th guide off the tip. So for a spinning rod, it's got a decent amount of stiffness to it. It's not meaty, but it is fairly rigid past that 4th or 5th guide from the tip. So it's definitely my go-to for it. If you crack them on it, they're not coming off. It's one of those things. That's one thing I love about a Nico is once you positively identify that you've got that fish hooked, whether it jumps and you see that it's hooked or that your worm's not there or whatever, once you got them hooked, just back off that drag, let them swim until they're tired. You are going to land that fish, period. If you don't land that fish, something is wrong with your setup. If you don't land that fish and you don't come back with the worm coiled up. If the worm's coiled up, sometimes it happens, whatever. But if you come back without the worm coiled or without a worm at all, and that fish gets off, something is wrong with your setup because you should land absolutely everything if the worm doesn't coil.
Excellent. Well, a comment from Robin Marcus Jones. This dude is one smart fisherman, and I agree. This is a really a lot of details here. I want to ask you one more detail. What about brush piles? Is there a brush guarded hook, a weed guard that you use? Do you not use it? What's your choice there?
So for that one, I'm going to be honest. I'm not huge on a brush guard if I can avoid it. But from there, I do know on good authority that owner, I think I don't know if it's a jungle Nico or what it is, but there's might be a jungle wacky. There's an owner one with a weed guard that is fairly consistent. And it's a good hook. But I will say that is the other Achilles heel of the Nico, not in landing fish, but in efficiency, it is kind of snaggy. So you got to keep it clear of cover. And if you're in cover, one of the best things you can do with it, be super gentle with it. Like when you feel you're in something, especially wood, it's not really rock or grass that's the concern, it's wood. When you feel you're in something, best thing to do is just be very gentle with it and just reel your line tight and just kind of ease on it. And most of the time you'll pop over stuff like, let's say it's a wooden crossbar of a dock or something, like just ease into it and you'll ease it over it, or a branch on a brush pile. But like I will say, even with a weed guard, you're going to get hung on this technique. That is one thing that is very unfortunate.
Yeah, that is a snaggy dude, but that's also the reason why it catches, it lands so many fish, right? But great stuff, Rich. I know this is immense, details on Nico, and I'm thrilled to learn all this, and it's really given me some interesting. Like I said, I've been wrestling with the minnow thing for quite a while and looking for some answers. And this is an avenue that I'm excited to go down. And we're going to do that. But Rich and I were talking about the sonar, man, forward-facing sonar. You're a magician. You're one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world, in my opinion, at using this technology. You've been limited to one period with it. Rich, we were talking about this, like what's Drew's situation,
Yeah. How are you strategizing your way through that, man?
I lost you through half of that. What am I strategizing?
How you're picking your periods in your events for FFS and non.
Yep. So in making the decision on when you want to use scope in our tournaments, one really important thing we got to think about is it's not just a, even odds period 1, period 2, period 3 situation. This is if you can make it work in the first period, there's much to be gained from it, because I can't tell you how many times this year that I fished an area in the first period, caught what I caught, and in the process gained enough understanding about those fish and how they acted and how they set up that I ended up fishing for that same general population, that area, without scope, because I was able to get back in touch with them in the first period and understand what they wanted, how they wanted it, how they wanted me to set my boat up. And so from that understanding, I've gained the ability to fish for the fish without scope even more effectively. So if you can make it work in the first period, you want to make it work in the first period. The only exceptions are if you're on a tidal fishery and you're looking for a specific tide. You cannot make the tide happen. You got to wait for it to occur a lot of times. So that's going to occur at the Potomac. At the Potomac, I'm just going to be honest. Like, straight up, my plan with scope will be whenever low tide is occurring, that is when I will use scope. Whenever I have my lowest tide of the day. And the rest of the day, I'll do whatever. So if that's first period, so be it. If that's third period, so be it. And then you have a situation where sometimes you're waiting for sun. Sometimes you need minimal wind or more wind than what you have in the morning. Just, playing those situations. Maybe you got some inclement weather coming in. That's a situation where I'm going to play it in a different period potentially, or current, like a TVA situation where they're only rolling current in the afternoon and those fish only set up right in that last period. That would be a situation where I'd use it in the final period. But I will say this, another reason to wait came upon us at Nico Rig this week. I wasn't super familiar with the lake, didn't know what I was getting into, but I knew how Chick was setting up, and I knew that the way that I found him at Chick would work at Nico Rig if they were doing the same thing. And so I put all my eggs in the basket of I was going to use scope in the final period, and I side scanned for half of the day looking for those fish to be set up the way I wanted to set them up, and then use the last period to cash it in to where I could use those first periods to set myself up for success. Because if I had just fished the whole time, I would have just been scratching and clawing, versus being that I sat down, took the time to look for them. Once I had them found, I could use scope to really exploit that population that I ended up around. So that was a reason to wait. But most of the time, we're coming into a tournament having practiced there, having known what the deal is. So I will say first period is kind of the move, but there's definitely some other variables that play in terms of determining what period you want to use it.
I wanted the Nico, we're talking about that. How effective are you? How are you being effective at being able to see your bait? What are the adjustments you're making, if any, to be able to better see that weapon? Because it might not give the best return compared to some others.
Mm-hmm. So with the Nico, due to the fact that the focal point of a bass with a minnow, the focal point of a bass is always going to be up or towards the boat. Always. That's going to be their direction of focus, which means that you need more distance between you and them to get them to commit to bite. With a Nico, it's not true. Their focus oftentimes down. They aren't facing you. They are facing the bottom. You are not in their line of sight whatsoever. So when you talk about a Nico rig, occasionally, or at least a good hunk of the time, you're not fishing for them where they're facing the boat, so you don't need as much range. So I'm going to, if there's a lot of fish around, it's target-rich environment, where I'm not worried about acquiring my next opportunity, but I know they're all around me, I'm going to pull it in pretty tight. I'm going to run my scope no further than 80 feet out, no further than, if I'm shallower than 20 feet of water, I'm not going to have it any deeper than 30 down ever. I'm going to run my color gain pretty hot to where whatever, I have on my screen, whatever my transducer is picking up, it'll pop it really hard. So I'm going to run my color gain, 5 to 10% above where my actual gain is set. And I'm gonna run it pretty tight. Not everybody does that, but I do. And if you keep it pretty tight, generally, it's super helpful for noticing a bait like a Nico rig, being able to acquire it close to the bottom by noticing it. And it's one of those things where you can target them and be super precise and really efficient very well because of having that screen pulled in. So that is the biggest hint that I can give when you're fishing that Nico rig on scope.
What other adjustments? We've been talking to a lot of guys about, the pollen and different water conditions. Like, are you a set it and forget it kind of guy, or what adjustments do you have to make when you're dealing with different water?
The things that I don't set and forget is distance out, depth, how far I've got it set down, and gain. Those are the three that I'm going to bump all day long throughout the day, depending on the situation, because scope is it has the potential to be personalized so many ways that, depending on my situation, I'm going to pull it way in, I'll send it way out, I'll send it way down, I'll pull it way up. Like, I'm going to personalize my screen for that specific situation to where I'm as effective as possible at making sure I notice an opportunity and maximize it before I ever ruin it with the boat. And oftentimes people hear that and they go, okay, set it really far out so I notice the fish far before it gets to the boat. What they don't realize is when you do that, so often you don't notice what's right around your boat right then, because you're looking at such a different part of the screen. You're looking at that right half of the screen. You're looking so far out that you often lose what's right around the boat. And oftentimes the boat is such a magnet to fish that you're going to draw those ones that are tight right to you, and you're going to totally ignore them. So sometimes being more effective means pulling it way in and noticing those fish that are right around you.
Great.
But I'm as far as settings goes, I'm fairly vanilla. I'm going to adjust depth and distance a lot. I'm going to adjust gain a good bit, just depending on how much noise is going on, or how much I need things to pop at distance. But I'm pretty vanilla as far as the rest settings goes. I've got amber on. I'm in the high 60s on gain. It's kind of my starting point. Color limit default. Install depth's not far from normal. It's all pretty normal. My orientation, I set it on forward. If I'm on forward, I don't want it to be confused. I want that set fixed. And I'm trying to think of what other settings that I have, but I don't think I have anything else that's too life-changing. And all my filters are off. Noise reject, ghost reject, all that junk off. I don't want the computer to be cutting any of the information out of my screen.
What about your transducer angle? I'm assuming you run some kind of a mount like a Fish Obsessed or something of the sorts. Like where do you have it as far as like angled up and down?
Stock Garmin shaft mount.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And mounted the way that when you buy the Garmin LiveScope LVS 34 and you get in there and you see the installation instructions with the shaft mount, read instruction 1 through wherever it ends and do it like it says. That's how I do it. And it's okay. The way that I roll with it. I'm super efficient with it. I'm super accurate with it. I know other guys have other setups, but for me, stock Garmin shaft mount, mounted the way the instructions say, nothing extra.
But
I can't argue with it.
let me ask you a big picture question, because I'm interested in where your head is with it. We get a lot of forward-facing hate going on. you're one of the guys at the forefront of this. You learned it quicker than anybody and scored so well with it and are crushing with it. Is it frustrating to you to have to deal with only one period or some of the trends going where they're not allowing it? Is that frustrating to you, or what's your thoughts on that?
So this is two different perspectives. As an angler and as a personal, competitor, it is frustrating. Obviously, I've taken the time to curate. It's not about curating scope as much as it is the power to go look for a population that other people are insufficient at finding or insufficient at making the most of. It's been something where in bass fishing for years, the high risk was always coupled with a high reward. Meaning if your risk was, I'm going to go look for them out in the middle of the lake, or I'm going to go look for them on some deal that people say doesn't work, in some part of the lake that people say can't win. If you're going to take that risk, there's also a high reward, which is whenever you find it, you're going to be rewarded by being able to maximize it. You're going to get all of it. And that part has been taken away a good bit. You're essentially, the winnability of unique patterns has been diminished significantly. Meaning you can use a unique pattern to build your case for winning. Meaning, like me and Backroof talked about this. I had the same conversation with Wheeler and Connell when we were at the Classic. Was scope in our format does not determine, in 99% of our tournaments, it does not determine who wins. It determines who can win. And that's the sense where as a competitor, I'm okay with it. That is the part that I am totally cool with, because it allows people to at least separate themselves from the field by using a unique perspective or a unique population, and then go run a secondary deal and see who has the best secondary deal, essentially, is what it often becomes. And I will say this, it has created a super unique and fun strategic element in the Bass Pro Tour events. I think it's also been something that's been very intriguing to fans. I think a lot of people have enjoyed watching it this year, just from the feedback I've heard. And I think it's something where if they were to make it, obviously, if it was up to me, just full disclosure, I wouldn't have done anything. Obviously, I've taken the time to master finding unique populations and finding fish that are really hard to catch, that other people aren't potentially capable of catching, but that you need that feedback to be able to do. Obviously, I've spent the time to do that, so it does suck to not be able to use it all day. But yeah. I will say, Major League Fishing found, I think, a good solution by doing the 1 period on, 2 off, where you're allowed to use it in whatever sense you want to, but for a limited amount of time. But it's every day of competition. It's super managed by the fact that we have an exact timeline of our days, because it is a 2.5 hour block 3 times. And I think it was a really intriguing way to do it by putting the power of when to use it and how to use it in our hands, and giving us that token every day, but making it where the uniqueness or the versatility of the format is kind of seen in every day of fishing. Meaning, in no day of fishing, watching Major League Fishing, watching the Bass Pro Tour, is anyone going to see just suspended fish fishing, just offshore fishing? And in no day are they only going to see somebody flipping a lay-down. And I think that, as far as the live product and the viewership product goes, I think creates a really unique and fun perspective. So as far as that goes, I think major props to them for finding a cool solution to what they wanted to do. As an angler and as a competitor, it does suck that I don't get to cash in the amount of time that I put in terms of finding unique populations and things like that. But they found a great solution for creating a really intriguing viewership situation, and I've really enjoyed myself this year. I'm having a great time, having a good season. The crazy thing is, I've got like a 6.5 place average after 4 tournaments. I'm averaging finishing 6.5 place, and I am a dozen points behind Jacob. So I'm having a great year. Not good enough yet, but it's been a really good time, and I have no complaints regardless. But that's my perspective.
That's a great perspective, and I'm glad to hear it, because we hear so much of the negativity on it, and I guess I hunger for the guys like you that, and you said it well. You learned this, right? You put the time, energy, and effort to develop a skill set that everybody has access to, but man, you've become one of the best at it, and it's great to hear hear that perspective. I'd honestly like to hear more of that from the guys like you that feel that way, and kind of counteract what's being, what we hear out there all the time.
The thing that I find unfortunate about a lot of it, really, the main thing, is that for years, the thing that's always been most intriguing to me about bass fishing is creating a unique experience and learning something that I didn't know. And how often can you ever learn something you didn't know by reeling a chatterbait through the grass or throwing a jig and a laydown? Although those things are fun and I love catching fish doing that. There's no hate there. I love catching bass doing that stuff. But the most fun thing in bass fishing is when you learn something new. And that is one part of it that we've kind of, it's not that we've been cut off from, because I can go fun fishing whenever I want. I can use it all at practice. I can learn lots of things. But it's that we're decentivizing the idea of learning. That's the part that kind of gets me, is that like we're vilifying learning. Even if it's a truth that people don't want to hear because they like throwing a laydown and throwing a jig and a laydown, or they like throwing a chatterbait through grass, which a lot of us do. Even if the truth is maybe that's not the right deal, it's still the truth. And learning what is the truth on that body of water at that time, I think is always been something that is really important, and we've always put an emphasis on. And to see that kind of taken a back seat forcibly, and to see that kind of vilified, has been something that's a little unfortunate for me, because you're restricting the amount of new experiences that people are able to have, because you're restricting the amount of experiences they're allowed to indulge themselves in. And so that is one part that kind of bums me out about it, for sure, which I love bass fishing no matter how we do it. But it does kind of bum me out a little bit, because we were just starting to get to the precipice of like showing off so many unique ways to catch them. And now it's kind of something that, we're still allowed obviously to do whenever we want. But as far as tournament competition goes, it's kind of been black sheep of the family eyes a little bit. And that's something I don't particularly love, but it is what it is. Like, I'm not going to sit around and complain when I'm getting to fish for a living. Like, I'm having a great time, but I wish that wasn't true, for sure.
I appreciate you stating that. You did a nice job doing it, and I want to applaud you for that, because it is a learning experience. We've learned so much about how populations of fish move, how bait fish position themselves, how fish spend time offshore in habitat that we struggled to catch them with over the years. It's been such a tremendous learning tool, and I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed learning it quite a bit. And but I want to dive back in. Like, okay, you don't have your forward-facing sonar in 2 periods. How have you been able to adjust to that? How has it been going? Like, are you making all your hay when you can use it, and then kind of holding on during those other periods, or have you had a lot of experiences where you did better without it?
So I've had a couple periods this year, not many, but a couple where I've had a better back half of the day, or back 2/3 of the day, than I had when I had scope. But for the most part, I'm putting my time and effort into manufacturing that bite as best as I can, because I will say the whole concept of like, it doesn't determine who wins, it determines who can win, proves true in the qualifying round, and the knockout round, the championship round, what have you, oftentimes. And I will say it does decentivize it enough for the rest of the field that a lot of them just don't put the time in that they need to in practice to generate that magical deal. And so I'm going to spend most of my practice time trying to generate something magical to absolutely scorch them for 2.5 hours. Where what I'm trying to do essentially, and this is my approach. This is one I've talked a little bit about, but it's not one that like is super. I don't know. For you guys, I'm going to talk about it for the most part. I don't, but I'm using practice to dial my 2:30, my 2 hours, 30 minutes, my 1 period a day. And then I'm going to go out and I'm going to scorch earth for 1 period in the tournament. As soon as the tournament starts with that, I'm going to get myself out to a quick lead. And I'm going to practice my bank deal or my secondary deal in the tournament. So it's going to look a little slow going through the qualifying round. And I want my scope stuff to still be firing and still be there. I still want to have some stuff in the tank as far as my scope stuff goes. But my scope stuff across the week, if this is a chart, it's going to start right here. And it's going to go kind of like this. It might still be way higher because let's say everything else is down here. Like, it's still going to be higher than everything else in terms of the capability of what you can do with it by the end of the week. But it's gonna generally follow a downward trend most of the time, because you're just going to lean on it if it's a unique deal. If it's a magical deal, it's magical because it's unique. And if it's unique, it's probably not easy to find more of. And so it's going to go down as you pressure it. But I want my bank deal, as the week goes on, to start at 0. It's going to start at, I have spent like maybe 2 hours the entire practice fishing for anything that I could even possibly fish without scope. And I want to see it climb. So I want my bank deal to be at its very best by the championship round. And I want my scope deal to still have some legs to it. That's kind of my goal every tournament. And I'm going to be honest, Chickajack was different because we started the tournament on Chickamauga. So no amount of practicing in the qualifying round did me any good in preparing for Nickajack, because Nickajack fishes more like Gunnersville than it fishes like Chickamauga. So it was an interesting deal, but like for Harris Chain, for Conroe, and almost for Murray, had we not had worse conditions last day, it got better until the knockout round. Harris Chain, I had my best fishing day the last day of that tournament. Conroe, I had my best fishing day of the week the last day of that tournament. Both of those, I had my worst scope day the last day of that tournament. And the same was true at Lake Murray. I had my best scope day because of daylight savings the last day of that tournament. But I had the knockout round was my best day of fishing the whole week of that tournament. I had the most bites fishing up shallow. And so, you know, as my week progresses, I want my fishing deal to be at its very best in the championship round. So I'm kind of strategizing my way to that throughout the beginning part of the week.
Excellent. Well, wow, it's fantastic. What a unique strategy, and you're using it to a T, and you're crushing the guys with it. Hopefully, well, what do you think? How many derbies you got left? Do you think you can run Wheeler down?
So we have 3 regular season tournaments left. I'm a dozen points behind him. And just being perfectly honest, we're talking about Jacob Wheeler here. We're not talking about anybody else. Like, this is Wheeler. Running him down is a hard thing to say, because what we're saying is you have to outperform him to this degree. Not just compete with him, not just hang with him, but outperform him. So we got 12 points is the cut, and it's going to be a tough one, but we've got Kentucky Lake, which is one that is going to be entirely within his wheelhouse, first week of June. It's a lake that, although I've never really fished there in June, it's one I'm very familiar with, so hopefully I can figure it out. But I think that one is one where I'm not going to stand to gain much, which means that ideally it's just kind of hang, keep myself there, maybe beat him by a point or two, hopefully. But you're not going to beat him by him having a poor tournament at Kentucky Lake. So I think most of it's going to come down to how the Potomac River and Saginaw Bay goes, because that's when we're really getting into the sticks of unique tournaments for our format. Potomac, a tidal fishery. We have not had a true tidal fishery that is a shallow water like numbers tournament like the Potomac is probably going to be with that 1.8 minimum. James River was a little bit of that, but James River is a different scenario. Everyone fished in Chickahominy other than skeet, and it was kind of a choked out, fish the wood stuff kind of fest. It's going to be a totally different deal at Potomac. And Saginaw Bay is going to be really unique. We got a 2-pound minimum. Saginaw Bay might be the world capital for 112s. And so you can catch the absolute fire out of them, and it's going to be a Great Lakes largemouth tournament, which I think will be a unique one to end on. So I think there's a lot of shaking to be done. But I'm going to be honest, to be in a, let's say Potomac and Sag aren't exactly his forte, they sure as heck aren't mine. Which means that I'm going to have to perform better than average and better than I have in the past on 2 places that are very anti my wheelhouse to have any shot at beating him. So I'm going to give my odds of running him down a slim for sure. It's not none. I'm in second. I'm 12 points behind him, but it's going to be a challenge. And I'm excited to get after it. Obviously, my approach is no different. My approach is always top 10 every tournament and fish as best as you can in championship round. So that's what we're going to do the rest of the year. But it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
anything could happen. You're fishing really well, and we look forward to watching it play out. You said a largemouth Great Lakes tournament. You think the largemouth will be a factor in Saginaw Bay?
With every fish counts, that will be a largemouth tournament for sure.
No kidding. Wow.
Yep.
That'll be fascinating to watch, and it'll be fascinating to watch the rest of the year. I tell you, we've got so many positive comments, Drew, on what you talked about today. You have such a great insight, such a clear scientific style approach. I love it, and I want to invite everybody to watch Drew's seminar. It's going to be releasing soon. Do we have a date on that, Rich? Do you have a ballpark?
Yeah. Yep. That is going to be released on June the 19th.
June the 19th.
Could get moved up. We'll see.
Yeah, could get moved up. I think we're getting a lot of people interested after this interview. But thanks. I appreciate the time, man. I appreciate you getting off the water with your dad. I didn't realize that. I hated to take that.
It's all good. He's got to go set up for an exam at the college, so he had to get off the water anyways. It's finals week for them.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing your father and son edit on the Bass Pro Shots. Where's that going to show up?
That'll be a YouTube video later around the time of Father's Day. So it was a really good time, and it was neck and neck for a while for sure.
What, you were competing with your dad? You mean?
Yep. 1v1, same boat. So,
oh, really?
Yep.
So there was a winner. Can you tell us?
I cannot divulge that information at this moment.
Well, let's wish Pops a happy early Father's Day.
Yep, absolutely.
And I thank you for hanging out with us. Thanks for being.
No doubt, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being a student and a teacher now. So and wish you the best of luck going up against the big gorilla, Jacob Wheeler. Mm-hmm. It'll be an amazing feat if you pull that off this year. So we'll be rooting for you.
Yep. I tell you what, I don't know about the 100 men versus a gorilla, but we got 65 men trying to beat the one gorilla, and he's still beating all of us. So
it's something else. It's something else to watch. Right. But you're hanging right with him. So good luck the rest of the season. We'll catch you soon. Drew Gill, everybody. That was so many amazing comments, Rich. Like I'm thrilled because, like I said on the show, man, the minnow has frustrated me, and I continually feel like there's a better weapon, a better tool, more consistent, a higher percentage way to go about getting these fish, and Drew's letting me know that there definitely is. So I'm thrilled with that. But guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with some more Bass University Live.
We're off the clock to clock more fish, to fill our live wells and empty our coolers, because there's more to explore. The latest Humminbird fish finders work fast, see clearly, and know all the best spots. They fish even smarter paired with the Minn Kota, and break down the water like never before. If you like your plans loose and lines tight, then it's time to explore. Only with Humminbird. Get right to the fight. New Mega Live 2 forward-facing sonar puts you on more fish with an ultra-clear, rock-solid picture of underwater action. Next-gen clarity, next-level fun. Only with Humminbird.
Right here, AquaView, mandatory equipment in my boat. I say it all the time. The smallmouths hide in the cracks in the rocks, and just saw a little bit of the same kind of rock with the cracks in it. And I realized that I had to put a bait down there. You wouldn't, idle over them and see them on your screen. You had to put a bait down there and suck them out of the rock. So, AquaView, big assist on this one.
And outdoors Bassmaster Classic champion,
Coffee. The angler's ritual. A reason to leave your cozy covers, even if you aren't headed to the river. We started Angler's Coffee because, well, we love to fish, we love coffee, and we care. Think of it as the rise before the rise.
A channel. The original element rods were really Cashin's first launch, kind of in a price point level. With that, we got a lot of feedback. And that's what brought about the Element Z2 in its launch. The most affordable American-made rod on the market.
Mother Nature may be tough. I'm tougher. I'll take you where chaos is the cost of entry and where the fish are worth the fight. Because the bigger the question marks, the better the quest.
Welcome back to Bass University Live. I'm reading through some of the comments, all real positive stuff. Justin, I don't know if you're there or you, Rich, can text Drew. We didn't talk about the gear ratio on his spinning reel setup. Charles Pearson asked that question. Maybe we can get that question answered.
Yeah, Charles, if you're a Bass U member, you could also you'll get that in his seminar. And if you're not, might be a reason to sign up, get your question answered. But we'll see if we can get it for him right now, straight away.
Nope. I see Jocelyn in the waiting room over there. How are you this morning, Jocelyn?
Wonderful.
We have to plan our fishing excursion coming up.
I know. No one wants to take me.
I'm sure many people on the message board would like to take you out fishing. I know we're going to take you out pretty soon. It's perfect time. May is the time to get out on the water, so we're going to definitely do that.
It's definitely not after Cinco de Mayo.
Is this the day after Cinco de Mayo? It is. Did you go out and celebrate, Josh?
A little bit.
Little tequila.
A little bit.
Yeah, those hangovers hit hard now in that older age. You know, starts getting to you. You can't be doing Monday night drinking, Josh. It's you know we're not 22 anymore.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, you're lucky she's not in control of this board. I think you might have been muted at that point.
I am in fact controlled in control right now. So.
But Justin, what do we got going on at Bass University? What are our Bass University offers right now?
We still got our 6-month deal going on right now. You get a Bass U cap and a face shield with that. And then if you just want to try it out, it's 50 days for $1.
50 days for $1. So get over there, get yourself subscribed to Bass University. You haven't done that already. I know we're talking about, we got ICAST coming up, Jocelyn, and that's what's new or what's upcoming for Bass University. We're also going to be working with the folks at Pure Fishing in next month. Rich, looking forward to that. Going to be on one of the greatest lakes in the country in a couple weeks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's we'll be working with the boys over at Gunpowder and Pure Fishing, and we'll be up on Champlain shooting some amazing content with several of their pro staff anglers, Adrian Avina, Brandon Coulter. There's a good handful more. Josh Bertrand, I think. So stay tuned. We're going to be releasing that stuff later on this summer, but should be a good time up on Champ.
What's our schedule? What's our release schedule looking like this week and next at Bass University? Yeah,
so this week at Bass U, we're releasing Lee Livesey, Progression of an Angler, and that's it's a little bit of a breakdown on kind of Lee's history and how he got to be so accomplished in such a short amount of time once he broke onto the scene, and kind of help people understand how to go through their own process to become the best angler that they can be. The mission of that one was help people grasp on how to progress through your own fishing and maximize your own results. And then next weekend we got a double banger, or next week we have a double banger. We have a hummingbird breakdown with a good friend of ours, Tyson Alvanos. He's a Humminbird. He works with Humminbird Johnson Outdoors, but he has a background in the military and sonar and really understanding how the technical components of all things sonar work. So we're doing a Humminbird breakdown next week with Tyson. And then also on Thursday of next week, we're releasing Keith Combs power fishing all year long, how to keep those power fishing techniques in your arsenal, rotate them through the seasons, and always keeping them honest. And Keith Combs is going to be walking us through that. So that's what we got coming out this week and next. Stay tuned for all of it on Bass University.
Awesome. And Tyson, I think it's important for you guys getting into the new sonar technology, you know, the 2D and the down scan, the side imaging, understanding how sonar works. I mean, we've been dealing with it for a long time, and we may take it for granted, but a lot of people, you know, don't really, or just getting exposed to exactly how that technology works. And it's so helpful to understand that when you're on the water in real time trying to find habitat and fish. So Tyson did a really great job. We're thrilled to have that piece of content come to Bass University. What do you got for us for sub of the week, Justin?
All right, where is it? Here we go. Sub of the week this week is Vinny. Shout out Vinny.
Vinny,
I believe that's an Upper Bay Bass.
Upper Bay Bass.
Shout out Ben. Look at that freaking football.
They're still pre-spawn bellies. Some of the fish we caught were still pre-spawning this past. But I gotta say, Jocelyn, I'm surprised you're not disappointed in us, because the two Bass University teams neither of us were in the check line on Saturday's tournament.
You had your finest Bass University employee fishing. I mean,
according to Jocelyn, as soon as she steps in the boat, you're automatically in the check line.
You're gonna be on a check line. Just watch.
Well, we're gonna have to test that out. Jake, we caught a lot of fish, but we didn't catch the big ones that we needed, and you guys did the same. Is there any tournaments going on the bay this weekend?
Nope.
No.
There's something.
Very, very
nothing.
Rare weekend of nothing.
It's needed.
Yeah. Right. Well, Rich, I know you're going to EFL down Potomac River. Want to wish you good luck down there for that tournament.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to it. That river has beat me up a little bit in the past, but I'm definitely going down there with a very different level of confidence than I've ever gone down there on the Potomac River. So going down there with a 10x level on the confidence and comfortability with that river, and looking forward to it. So I appreciate it. We're gonna see what we can do.
It's been, and I don't know how this will help you during your practice and preparation, but over the years we have kind of discovered that the Potomac always seems to be about 2 weeks ahead on seasonal patterns than the upper. So things will be just I guess with respect to the spawn, they ought to be just a little bit further along for you down there.
Yep. That's going to be the first baseline, Pete, is trying to understand what the majority of the population is doing in what areas, and we're going to use a BASHU principle from one of our guys, Brandon Polinick. We're going to create a percentage triangle in a core area and not get outside of that. Try to break down what's going on, really understand what's going on with that population of fish in that area, and then just let's see who can reel them in better on tournament day.
Yep. Don't overcomplicate it, man. That place.
That's it,
you can overcomplicate the freaking Potomac, I feel like, and you really just need to settle in on.
That's it. That's it.
Couple core areas there, and there's one that fishes just like the flat that I think you'll be doing all right at.
It's interesting you say that, because Drew said it, and after studying Bass University seminars and all the pros for such a long time, that the one commonality was the simplistic nature of whatever technique it was or strategy that they were employing. They kept it as simple as possible. We've heard that so much, and it was interesting to see him make that correlation and use it in the complex forward-facing sonar world.
Right.
Simple, just two options, and that's it. So yeah, it's great stuff. Is there anything else we need to address, guys?
You got your I mean, it's Lake Fork week here, Pete. I don't know
Let's hear the lineups.
Fantasy.
I've got my picks in.
Well,
Rich has been neglectful.
Go ahead. Let's do it.
Yeah, why don't you share your picks first, Pete?
Okay. Well, you're gonna have to give me a second. I got.
All right, I guess I'll go. I'm the only one ever prepared on this podcast.
Oh,
all right.
yeah.
Group A. I'm going with the home dog, Lee Livesey. We just edited his progressions of an angler, and I'm rocking with Lee, man.
That's a very
I don't know.
Pick, Justin.
Yeah, I don't really know. Hey, it is risky. I picked him last year, and he probably had one of the worst tournaments of his career. But it ain't happening twice. So I'm riding with Lee. Group B, I'm going with another Lee, Jordan Lee. He had a good event there last year. And Group C, I'm going with Wesley Gore again. He had a slow start to the year, and I picked him last week on Hartwell, and he got a top 10. He did well on Fork last year. I think he's going to keep the ball rolling. D, I'm going with Dakota Ebear. I mean, yeah, Group B, I'm going with Hackney. I'm not overcomplicating this one here. Think maybe a little bit of a shad spawn going on. I feel like Hack Dog might be up there throwing that swim jig, that white swim jig up on the bank.
You know what I mean?
Got a scoper in there with Wes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Feel free to copy my picks, Pete. You need to be taking outliers here because of the gap that I have. It's separation now. I mean, you need to get moving here.
I mean, you're bragging. Come on, dude. Naga Wicken, who is leading the Bass University pool, has 6,200 points.
Yeah.
And he is crushing it. So I don't want to hear all of your bragging.
I have 5,400
podcast,
but I mean, it's me versus you, PG. This means a lot to me. If you can't tell.
Well, I'm going all front runners right now, and I'm going to repick Livesey, Hamner, Fothergill, Milliken, and Zaldane, the Texans.
Right.
Got a lot of Texans.
You're going pretty much all Texas guys.
Yep. That's what you did too, Josh. Good picks.
Pretty much.
All right.
I'm going to adjust and retool as I hear about practice. See some.
Yeah, we still got a few derbs left, Pete. You don't need to be taking big risks yet. Nope. Save those for the last two, and let's make it interesting.
Dude, well, I'm just going to run you down, just like Wheeler's going to get run down by.
All right.
I am going to run you down. Here it comes.
If you're calling me Wheeler, I'm cool with that.
What do you got? You got picks?
All right, here's my roster. See if I can figure this out. I got Livesey in Group A. I got Brian Schmidt, Group B. I got Cooper Gallant, Group C. I got De Palma in Group D. And I got Gussie in Group E. That's just the slide through and just,
Yep.
See
the boys. Come on, let's go. Not overcomplicating it. That's the method here. Not overcomplicating it.
A lot of Bass U boys in those picks. I like
it. That's it.
I'm seeing remnant of Livesey with that big giant top water up in a foot of water. How cool would it be for that to happen again at this event?
He's fishing good so far this year, man. He's going to be tough to beat.
Yep.
I mean, you say it's crazy you say that, but like So many of these guys on the elites have fished fork, what, like
A
7, 8, 9 times now?
Yep.
Like, it's not a big lake. These guys, majority of the field's got pretty good experience on that lake. It's not big by any means, but and it's crazy that Lee's still got to watch out for him.
Because he didn't he win so many tournaments on that?
Yeah.
Like before he got into the elites? I listened to the seminar.
Oh yeah.
Well, got it on for a long time.
Yeah,
living in a Mexican restaurant with no doors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll see if it's odd how that happens, but there's patterns and there's behaviors that when you spend so much time on a body of water to get those really big ones, not obvious. And Lee's definitely got a handle on it. Well, we'll see. We'll see if I can run you down a little bit on this next round, but you're doing a good job, Justin.
It ain't happening this week, I'll tell you that.
On dominating. He's always big talk. But
Yeah.
when you put him live with a jig in his hand, no fish come in the boat. So, yeah.
Yep. I'm a different person now than I was back then, Pete.
All right. That's what you ever evolve. Guys,
I'm throwing a Nico rig now, putting the jig down, man. Yeah.
No kidding. Drew, thank you for being our guest today. He was amazing. Thank you, Rich and Jocelyn and Justin.
Yeah.
And, we look forward to seeing. Thanks everybody for watching. So many positive comments about Drew Gill. He's definitely one of the great teachers, and being so young, such a great insight. Glad to have him with us. Look for his seminar on Nico Rig fishing to be coming up with the next couple of weeks at Bash University. And we will see everybody next week on the next episode of Bash University. Hey, do we want to tease? I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut that close off, but is Eric, are we set for next week's show?
We are.
With Epic Eric?
Bait modification show with Rob Jordan and Epic Eric.
Part 2.
Yep. Two amazing anglers that really dive into bait modifications. We're going to concentrate on modifications for the post-spawn or spawn post-spawn modifications, and look forward to talking to those guys next week. They always have some really insightful, crazy things that they're doing to the baits. So look for that.
I'm going to get in on it this time, Pete. I got a couple things that I'm going to talk about involving this little dude.
Oh, all right. Oh, chatterbait modifications. I like it, guys.
Very minor, but it matters.
Look forward to seeing everybody next week at Bash University Live. Have a great day, everybody. Get out there and do some fishing. Cinco de Mayo.